good morning, and welcome to the morning brief on Channels Television. It's a beautiful Thursday morning, clement weather, a lot to be grateful for. I am Bukola Koka, a damsel, certainly not in distress, but alone here in Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, and missing her brothers, Kadi and Jeffrey. Of course, Kadi will be joining us much later on the show, perhaps very, very soon. So it's been a very dramatic last 24 hours, of course, with a lot of things happening, especially in the nation's capital, Abuja. We've seen, yes, indeed, the screening of the new Chief Justice of Nigeria. We'll come to that later on. But we've also seen that very big news coming through that a cabinet shakeup is imminent. And so Nigerians are waiting with bated breath to see what will happen. Of course, the president's special advisor did not give a timeline to it. He says he cannot put a specific date to it, but he's certain that it will happen, perhaps before October 1. So who stays? Who goes? In your own perspective? And I'm sure that that's, an issue of big concern to Nigeria, particularly with, non-performing sectors in our national life. So who also should be returning in your own perspective, or should not return? Because we have to be looking at, this matter from all perspectives. The health ministry, is it performing in your own view, particularly with reports coming through from medical organizations about issues, real issues of malnutrition in primary healthcare centers in rural areas, in their own facilities as well. We've seen those reports, particularly coming in from the north. And following that announcement as well, that a certain amount, about 8 billion naira, has been deployed to the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency for renovation of health centers across the country. Have you begun to see any significant change in your locality as far as primary healthcare development is concerned? We can also talk about agriculture, energy, which is, fueling the increasing price of food and commodities. So in your view, is that a sector that is performing? Who should go? Who should stay? We can continue on and on. We can also talk about rising energy costs and the seeming inadequacy of the alternative CNG. So what should be done in that area? We can also look at related agencies as well. But it's the ministries that, will get a shake-up in the next couple of weeks. So some ministers may be sitting on the edge right now. Since it's Truth Thursday, let's also look at the resumption of office of the new CJN. And it was with pride, indeed, that we saw yesterday Justice Kudirat Kekere-Ekun being screened, and she promised, yes, indeed, she promised to look at the issue of corruption and serve, meritoriously. Kadi is ready now. Hello, Kadi.
Come on, I've been knocking, knight in shining armor, but you don't need any rescuing, Bukola. Good morning. I'm live in the nation's capital, Abuja. It's Thursday, September the 26th. And I can tell you that it's clement weather here. It's calm, right? I don't think the shake-up has gone round just yet. I'm Kayode Okikelu. And yes, Bukola, there's a lot on the plate this morning. And since I'm close to the seat of power, maybe I can bring you some exclusives and some insights on the show this morning. It's definitely a bumper package, as Bukola would say. So, Bukola, what do we have for them on the show this morning? It'll walk us through.
Indeed, we have quite a lot. But just before we get to it, I was going to, come up with some, issues that need to be looked at critically. I don't want to leave the gunpowder dry for later on today, Kadi, as you would say. I want us to say it as it is. The excitement, about the new CGN only goes as far as the fact that she's the second female to occupy that office. But she may just need to get brand new shoes and not step into any shoes, particularly because of the crisis of confidence in the judiciary. And, this is not coming, as an opinion, from just one person. this is the generality of the view of Nigerians, that indeed perhaps the judiciary should be the last hope of the common man, but is not necessarily the last hope of the common man right now. We remember all too clearly the recent off-the-microphone saga in the National Assembly, the last assembly, during their moment of truth when Senator Bolkachua talked about having enjoyed the independence of his wife. And that got, of course, the Senate president at that time uncomfortable. We also remember the revelation, by Senator Rochas Okorocha, also during that moment of truth when he said the way and manner in which the Senate president returned, the former Senate president returned to the chambers is a lesson in political discourse that should be studied, and perhaps the outgone Senate president should assist him. So these are real issues that the new CJN should deal with. Those who are in that sector have talked about the need for the unbundling of the institution of the CJN, not the person now, but that office, such that it can serve, and a second look indeed at the Judicial Council, such that it can be empowered to really discipline erring judges and not the slap on the wrist kind of punitive measures that is meted out on erring judges. We could go on and on about what the new CJN needs to do, but of course we'll be having that conversation yet again later on the program. But Kayode, I don't know how you're weighing in on these issues. A lot has happened indeed in the last 24 hours.
Absolutely. So let's get started with what we have on the show this morning. Today, we check on the financial state of the state. And this is really important, particularly because of increased revenue from the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee by more than 40%. Yes, get that, more than 40%. Despite this increase, most of the subnationals, aka states, are drowning in debt as 20 state governments borrowed a total of 446 billion naira to address budget deficits and to cover various expenses in 2024 so far. So let's see if we can look into the books with expert perspectives.
Indeed, and that's not all. We're also going to be looking at that impending cabinet shakeup. It made headlines at the beginning of the month and was probably the subject of whispers in the corridors of ministries in Abuja. But news about the impending cabinet shakeup has now been confirmed. The presidency says the planned reshuffle will be evidence-based. What does this mean? Stay with us for this conversation with someone, of course, who should know.
And as you would expect, we're making a stop at the Temple of Justice today. And rightly so, following the confirmation of Justice Kudirat Kekere-Ekun. Well, the task before the live bencher and second female Chief Justice of Nigeria is Herculean, as she inherits an institution some have described as in the throes of a crisis of confidence following myriad of allegations of corruption against one judge too many. Will the new CJN demonstrate some of the strength found in the meaning, which translates young leopard, by championing the much-needed judicial reforms? Well, it's in her name, but we'll find out if it will be in her game. So stay on for that big conversation.
Indeed, we look forward to seeing that manifest in her approach to her job. And of course, you are the third anchor on the show, as we always say. So we expect your thoughts, we expect your questions, we expect even your videos of what exactly is happening in your area. Since it's that time of review and scrutiny, let's know how your elected representatives are performing so that we can help amplify your voices. So we'll be taking your comments later on the show. Speaking of which, we're starting with the top stories. After this break, stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back, and we're starting the nation's capital as the Senate has confirmed the appointment of Justice Kudirat Kekere-Ekun as the substantive Chief Justice of Nigeria. The confirmation follows the conclusion of the screening process by the lawmakers. Justice Kekere-Ekun pledged to uphold the integrity of the judiciary, the rule of law, defend the Constitution, and ensure zero tolerance for corruption.
The statement was so clear that Nigerians and Afghanistan, these two countries are the most corrupt countries in the whole world. And here we are. Sir, I want a very distinguished acting Chief Justice of the Federation to help us to explain those who David Cameron were actually referring to.
I think the first thing in giving my CV, I said one of the things that I'm known for is integrity. I'm also known for being strict on discipline. And therefore, in order to ensure that the integrity of the judiciary is maintained, I will ensure that the code of conduct is fully complied with. I will ensure that there is zero tolerance for corruption.
Distinguished colleagues, will the Senate confirm the nomination of Honorable Justice Kekere-Ekun Kekere-Ekun for appointment as the Chief Justice of Nigeria? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The nomination of Honorable Justice Kekere-Ekun Kekere-Ekun is hereby confirmed as the Chief Justice of the Federation of Nigeria.
And staying with the judiciary, Justice Mohammed Idris of the FCT High Court is seeking the support of members of the bench in enthroning justice, equity, and fairness to all. Justice Idris, who represented the Chief Justice of Nigeria at an induction ceremony for the newly appointed Senior Advocates of Nigeria, explains that their role remains key to building confidence for the nation's peace and stability. 87 lawyers were recently appointed as Senior Advocates of Nigeria. And Justice Emeka Nwite of the Federal High Court, Abuja, has adjourned the suit filed by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission against the immediate past governor of Kogi State, Yahaya Bello, to October the 30th this year. The adjournment came as the ex-governor Bello moved to the Supreme Court to file an appeal seeking to set aside the arrest warrant issued by the trial court on April the 17th. At the day's proceedings, the counsel to Mr. Bello drew the court's attention to the fact that the issue of arraignment of the defendant was the subject matter of an appeal already entered by him at the Supreme Court. He adds that the appropriate thing to do was to wait for the decision of the Supreme Court in the aforesaid appeal before taking any step for arraignment. In the meantime, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, says no amount of blackmail arising from the prosecution of former Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello would make it compromise its integrity. In a statement issued by the EFCC spokesman, Mr. Delio Yewale, the commission asked the former Kogi State Governor to obey the court order and appear before Justice Emeka Nwite of the Federal High Court, Abuja. The anti-graft agency alleges that the former governor had made several unsuccessful attempts to throw spanners in his ongoing trial through some irresponsible and utterly rascally efforts. And staying with the courts, Justice Peter Lifu of the Federal High Court, Abuja, has restrained the governors of the People's Democratic Party, its National Working Committee, and Board of Trustees from tampering with or dissolving the executive committees of the party in Rivers State. The court also restrained them from constituting any interim committee to replace the officers of the party at the state, local governments and ward levels who are pro-Nyesom Wike in Rivers. Justice Lifu gave the order while delivering ruling in an ex parte application brought before him by the PDP Rivers State Executive Committee led by Mr. Aaron Chukwuemeka and his counterparts at the local governments and ward levels. Justice Lifu also ordered the PDP national body and others not to tamper with or dissolve the local governments and ward leadership of the PDP in the state, who are said to have been elected along the State Executive Committee this year at various congresses of the party. And more politics, despite some claims by the sacked All Progressives Congress Caretaker Committee Chairman, Mr. Tony Okocha, that there are ongoing litigations stopping the October the 5th local government council elections. The Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission, RCEC, says all is now set for the election. Speaking with Channels Television, the commissioner in charge of civic education at RCEC, Tobbins Tamunotonye, said there is no such court order known to the commission. The Minister of Interior, Mr. Olubunmi Tunjiojo, has directed an unconditional and comprehensive investigation into the allegations of bribery and corruption within the Nigeria Correctional Service, NCOS. A statement issued by the SA Media and Publicity to the Minister, Mr. Babatunde Alao, says the Minister unequivocally condemned the alleged reprehensible behavior, emphasizing that any form of indiscipline, unprofessionalism, and corruption will be met with zero tolerance and severe consequences within the paramilitary services under his purview. The minister has also called for a special investigative team headed by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Interior, Dr. Magdalene Ajani, to probe these allegations and submit a comprehensive report. The minister reassures the public that the investigation will be rigorous, transparent, and impartial, and that appropriate disciplinary actions will be taken against any personnel found guilty. And President Bola Tinubu has expressed a desire to reshuffle his cabinet. The special advisor to the president on information and strategy, Mr. Bayo Ononuga, confirmed this to State House correspondents while briefing them on some national issues at the presidential villa, Abuja. He notes that, contrary to insinuations in some quarters, the current government has recorded significant achievements in its quest to transform the economy, which members of the public are unaware of. Mr. Ononuga notes that President Tinubu has ordered his ministers to ensure that they engage the public by publicizing what the government is doing in their various ministries. Explaining further on the reason for President Tinubu's decision, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Digital Strategy Engagement and Communications, Otega Ogra, notes that during the retreat that was organized for the ministers shortly after their inauguration, President Tinubu had made it clear that there would be periodic reviews of their performance. Now, outside our shores, the Israeli Army Chief Herzi Halevi has hinted that the latest strikes on Lebanon are to prepare for the possible entry of troops. More than 90,000 people have been displaced in Lebanon since Monday. That's according to the UN, as Israel's military says it is carrying out a new wave of extensive strikes in southern Lebanon and the Bekaa area. Lebanon's health ministry has revealed that 51 people have been killed in Israeli airstrikes on Wednesday. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has told British nationals in Lebanon to leave immediately after fighting intensified between Israel and the Iranian-backed group Hezbollah. And in sports, four-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka says she does not want to have regrets after confirming that she teamed up with Serena Williams' former coach, Patrick Mouratoglou. The former world #1 defeated Lucia Bronzetti of Italy 6-3, 6-2 in the first round of the China Open with the Frenchman in her player's box. And so, what are your thoughts to the big stories today? I am particularly looking forward to reading them. And of course, what are you saying, especially about the impending cabinet shakeup? But that's not where we're starting from this morning. We're looking, first of all, at the continuing fight against corruption by the EFCC versus Yahaya Bello. The federal government files fresh charges against former Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello. And these are some of the things that you are saying concerning that Daddy Spearman is the first person speaking this morning. And what do you have to say, Spearman? No matter where he takes the case to, he will still come back to answer his call. The Supreme Court will bring him back to face his case. So let's see how that plays out. Speaking of which, the Supreme Court will be maybe not necessarily in the eye of the storm, but under scrutiny about how it will handle that appeal filed by the outgone governor of Kogi State, Mr. Yahya Bello. What is Kingsley Monday saying? Kingsley Monday says, let's see how this will play out. Nevertheless, until Nigeria has strong government institutions where it won't favor only the elite and drag the unprivileged, we are going to rigmarole in the circle of big manism, above the law syndrome. And of course, the approach sometimes to fighting corruption gives rise to these kinds of comments. Of course, we'll take the word of the EFCC that the former governor must stand trial. But why was the former governor not taken into custody and questioned when he visited the commission that same day? Of course, other pictures that emerged that day, revealed that the former governor actually had a conversation with one of the key officials of the commission, and we have those pictures. But of course, what the commission has said is that the former governor is still wanted, but we haven't seen any deliberate effort by the commission to arrest the former governor. The EFCC, all eyes is on the commission to go after governors who have allegedly, siphoned or dipped their hands into the pot of the national cake. Now let's continue with some of your comments on this one. Kingsley Monday, we're taking that. Uwana Umowiang says, this shows that the fight against corruption isn't one-sided. Every entity should be held accountable. This could complicate current matters for the EFCC. Let's see if they can hold their ground. Yeah, we'll take your point there. Then Omo Iya Teacher says, Yahya Bello, accused of stealing 80.2 billion naira, went into hiding and lied about surrendering to authorities and now hired a lawyer to drag the EFCC to court. And of course, you can see the end of that comment. But let's go to another talking point. This time around, CBN to sanction banks for not dispensing cash via ATMs. And of course, that came as a welcome development to a lot of Nigerians, particularly because of the cash crunch in ATMs, or the absence of it at all. And the first person speaking this morning is Gunnar Bayo, who says, I don't blame the banks. The ATM business isn't as profitable as before. Really? Maintenance costs and scheme fees eat up most of the revenue. Many banks are shutting down ATMs because they're not making a profit. You might make 200 million in a year, but expenses could be as high as 900 million naira. Well, we need the banks, of course, to provide evidence to this effect. The banks may be making a loss, as you say, but the banks in their annual declarations are turning in huge profit, in fact, more than any other sectors. And this has engendered another exchange rate of local currency in the country, where you have to, use your own money to buy your own money. And, that's really an unwelcome development as far as the economy is concerned. Let's take this one from Realist Certified, who says, maybe we should start reporting banks and branches that refuse to load their ATMs to support the Central Bank of Nigeria for this new development. Well, the reports are out there. The evidence abounds. Now, Titilayo says, exactly what I've been waiting for. People don't use ATM machines again. Why? Because it doesn't dispense cash most times, now forcing us to go use POS. Well, that's it for that talking point. Let's go to the next one. President Bola Tinubu calls on world leaders to prioritize debt forgiveness to Nigeria and other developing countries. Of course, I'm interested in what you'll be saying about this one this morning. Temi says, debts are supposed to be invested in something. After a specific amount of time, it would have been fruitful and used to pay off. How can you be begging, make them dash you money? Well, that's in local parlance, but really what she's trying to say is that how can you be asking that they, forgive your debt or, give you a free lunch? Means it wasn't used wisely as invested. That's That one from Timmy. And the last one, that should be applicable to Nigerian financial institutions. And he goes on to mention banks, but I won't do that on this platform. Let's go to another talking point very quickly so that we can cover as much ground as possible. The Senate confirms the appointment of Justice Kekere-Ekun as CJN. And Feyi is the first person speaking, and you say, congratulations, Madam Kekere-Ekun. But then the work must be done. And Abdullah, he says, 19th Nigerian CJN, congratulations. And as we move on to another talking point this morning, President Bola Tinubu has expressed his readiness to reshuffle his cabinet. And that's the one I'm looking forward to. Olowo Lagba is the first person speaking. And what do you say? Honestly, most of the ministries should be abolished so that cost of running government can be reduced. The Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy should be removed or combined with other ministries. Straight red card to Ministry of Health, Marine and Blue Economy Transport. And of course, Irunia says, Mr. President, you don't need to announce achievements. If you do well, we will all see it. Well, that's as honest as honesty can go. And as we move on to the next talking point, this one is an interesting one. And it comes, of course, with some audiovisual. We don't want Band A again. Leave us on Band B. Lagos residents protest. So this is about the power situation in the country. Now, the first person speaking, of course, that's the video there. You see some residents protesting the power situation in their community. Perhaps we can hear what they have to say. Okay, so let's continue. Edo Wizard is the first person writing in this morning on this one. And you say, this is the new trend. They deliberately switch people to Band A just to get them to pay more without consulting them or alerting them. People are on Band B, 16 to 8 years light. 16 to 18 hours rather light. Why switch them to Band A without their consent or request? Well, perhaps Band A comes with its own implications in higher tariff costs. And maybe these people are protesting that, they're having to pay more. But the issue is, do they also have the service that they're paying for? And if it is the cost of being on Band A is too high for them, then they have a right to demand a review. But the next person speaking is Reliable Reports, who says, Nigeria is really funny. We're stuck choosing between Band A and Band B and A and Band B, and like it's a game now. Now, Kemi White says, there is a reason electricity is categorized as a utility. Nigerians should come out now and fight these classifications. So keep them coming. Of course, this is your community show. We'll amplify your voices. And the next one is on residents calling out government over conditions of rice being distributed in Borno State after billions was donated to the people. Sadly, we must end. Okay, we can't take that one. Let's go to the next talking point this morning, which is about daughter of the billionaire businessman Temi Otedola, who stormed Paris Fashion Week in the L'Oreal Paris show. And it comes with a video. Are we ready with the video, or we'll take the comments first? Yes, that's it. Now, speaking of color and looking regal in that outfit. All right, if there's time, would have taken more of your comments, but that's it for a review of some of the big talking points. What your reactions to the big talking points on the show this morning. We'll be starting off with that big story, the cabinet reshuffle. What will it look like in the coming weeks? That will be our first port of call this morning, so stay with us. We'll be right back.
Well, let's talk about this imminent shakeup in President Bola Tinubu's cabinet. What is it about? How soon will it happen? How do you rate these ministers or cabinet members, as the case may be? We have joining us on the program this morning, Mr. Daniel Bwala, legal practitioner, and barrister Lincoln Zane is right here with us in our Abuja studio. Mr. Bwala, you're welcome to the morning brief.
Thank you. Good to see you in Abuja.
Well, yes, we had to just come closer to the seat of power to get what exactly is happening. Just a few kilometers away, we saw Mr. Bayo Nonuga making that statement, saying that the shakeup is imminent. He didn't give a time frame, saying it's a prerogative of the president to decide when, but he said that the president had spoken about shaking up his cabinet. But before that, I need to deal with the elephant in the room. A lot of people had tipped you to become the presidential spokesperson. Some said, no, don't put him. Some said, well, he's the person that the cap fits anyway. But the question for me is not whether or not you're interested in that job. The question is whether the president is interested in you to take that job. Is that something you've gotten?
Well, I'm not aware of, first of all, thank you and good morning. I'm not aware of this thing you talked about.
Which of them? People are tipping you for the job?
Yeah, that people are tipping and all that. I read things on social media. What I know is that every citizen of Nigeria who believes in government and how government should be run should play his part in supporting the government in whatever way you can, especially in areas you feel you have what we call a comparative advantage. So, and that is what we have been doing without necessarily having to wait for appointment. If you remember from January 10, when I first met with the president and officially told him of my commitment to support him, from that day onward and up to today, I mean, the zeal, the zest, the commitment in advocating for his government and his achievement has always been our priority. And that to me is the motivation. If you are given official capacity to do what you're already doing in the private capacity, it's a different ballgame. But my point is that we are committed to supporting the president.
So no one has asked for your CV yet in the presidency?
My CV is out in the media.
No, you know how these things work. They will ask for your CV. Has anybody asked, as a president, you shown interest?
I plead the fifth.
Well, that doesn't work here on the morning brief. No, just to be clear, because these things are out there, and I'm sure you've heard that. Some say you cannot be trusted. Yeah. And I'm sure you've seen that report. Yeah. Some say, no, he can't be trusted. He spoke against the president. Some say, well, he's been doing this work already. Just make it official. So are you interested to begin with?
I say I plead the fifth. Section 36 of the Constitution talks about right to be silent.
Whatever happened to you being transparent, telling Nigerians...
What I am saying, Mr. Kayode, is that every citizen who believes in this government, as I do believe strongly that the president is committed to the reform of Nigeria. Right. I know that because a lot of presidents in the past have not summoned the courage to take the bold step he has taken. Because certainly if you take that bold step, it will be a different ball game for Nigeria. When you are trying to reset, certainly it is going to be visited with economic consequence, which is what we're saying. So when he took that decision, you find that only few courageous people will stand with him and continue to advocate for that, because that policy is not popular. Okay. And I know it's for the good of Nigeria.
I see what you're doing here, but I'm a bit disappointed. I know you to always speak straight, but this one you seem to be dodging, so I wonder if there are other things at play here. So we'll set that aside for a moment.
Thank you.
And talk about the bigger picture here. Yeah. And that is the fact that an imminent shakeup is on the horizon, and this has been on for a while. Some say it's just a ruse, it will not happen, and some say, well, let's wait and see. But my point here is this: for the ministers who have not come out to speak, some say they're TV shy, but they weren't TV shy during campaign. They were not crowd shy during campaign. A lot of these people came out and spoke about this, the president, but all of a sudden they've gone cold. A lot of them don't take their calls. Some are not even available. The numbers that were ringing before, the election and the victory and appointment is not going through anymore. So is it that they're media shy, or they don't really have much to defend? If they were to sit beside me now, I'll show them inflation figures, I'll show them unemployment figures, I'll show them the reality of things, and they're like, I can't take all of that heat. So what exactly do you think is that?
I think that, Mr. Kayode, that exactly the point that the president is making. And if you want to give an excuse as a minister to say that maybe you are not in the media department or in the media corner of the president or of the government, he is saying, but you are a minister of the federation and you have a ministry that you preside over. So you must know what you have achieved in your ministry. And you are the best prophet of the message of the ministry. And so if what you have achieved is worth talking about, and you go ahead talking, that means we are going to have as much the number of ministers as the spokesperson of the president, so to speak. If you have 30 ministers are speaking. That means that the pressure will be laid on the president. He doesn't have to come out to explain what someone else has already done. He said, go and speak, don't be media shy. But I think the point is that, and exactly the point, when you do not have, this is not about the government, it's about you. You assign responsibility to someone, and he doesn't have much to say about that. So he tries to avoid the media. Because when you talk about media shy in politics, before you venture into politics, either as a player or as a supporter in politics, one instrument in politics is your vocal cavity. Your ability to articulate what either the policy of government or your own policy or what your own dreams are for the people. When you cannot speak, your work cannot speak, then that means there is a fundamental problem, not with the government, but with you. But the reason why the president is talking about rejigging is because he has the mandate of the people. Section 5 of the Constitution says the executive powers of the Federation lies in the president, and that he execute that responsibility either by himself or through the vice president or through the ministers of the government of the Federation or other organs of government and agents of government. So when you are there on his behalf. And so if you can't speak, then definitely you will have to assess, because what you have done cannot be hidden. And that's why there was this KPI, if you remember, at the inaugural lecture they had. They said KPI for every person. And you can tell, without nobody saying whether you perform or not, you can tell based on the KPI and what you have achieved. So what he did the other time was he said, go and engage with Nigerians and tell Nigerians what my objectives were, what your assignment was at the time, and how you have achieved it. If you remember, there was a time each minister, they had a press briefing, I think for 5 days or so, where everybody had to talk. You could see, Nigerians can see those who were able to articulate that, and those who weren't able to articulate.
But the challenge is, pardon me, Mr. Bola, they're not able to sit down and have a conversation.
Right.
Let the press ask you questions. Same way I'm asking you questions.
Right.
Let's look at what you've done or what you've not done.
Correct.
And say, what is going on here? And I'm looking at a list of over 40 ministers, and I can pick the ones that have actually spoken out, offered themselves for interviews. I can count a handful of it. And it takes me to this question before we go to our Lagos studio.
Right.
Does that mean that the president didn't choose the right people for these jobs?
No.
Because you don't change a winning team, Mr. Bola. So obviously, these teams or these players are not performing well. It speaks to their performance if they cannot come to speak. And this is out there, Nigerians know this thing. But I want to go back to the president's choice of these people. Do you think he's looking back and saying, I didn't pick the right people for this positions?
Not necessarily, because the president does not have the celestial powers to know whether you can or cannot.
No, I'm saying now with the performance.
So with the performance now, and that's why he has put out the words that he's going to do it. I think part of the confusion we have in the media is that people try to peg what he will do to events. May 29, he will do it. He didn't do it. June 11, whatever, he will do it. He didn't do it. Oh, he's going to do it in August because they are clocking the first year. Oh, no, he didn't. Oh, 1st October. He's not going to be guided by events. He's going to be guided by when he wants to. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Because one, nobody asked the president to set the KPI. In fact, all the presidents in the past, he is one president who is bold enough to say, look, I'm not going to cover anybody. I will give you all the support you need to perform your duty, but I will assess you. And if you don't do well, it's not going to be on your face or whether I know you or you were with me before. Once there is non-performance on your part, I am going to ask you to go. So for those who have failed him, look, this is how I look at it. I look at it that the president does not have a problem of entrusting responsibility, but those who have failed him have failed themselves and their destiny. Because one thing about life is opportunity. And sometimes you don't even know somebody has the capacity to do something until you give him the responsibility. And that's what he has done. And most presidents after they win election in the first term, is politics. There are one or two people making a recommendation. So you tend to give people opportunity. When it doesn't happen, then you will now come out and do what you think.
A lot of people have looked at this list originally and said, I don't think this person is fit. You're appointing a politician to a role that you have to, that you need to have put someone who is a professional or an expert in that field. So people had raised this, but saying that it's happening over a year after another thing. But let's go to our labels.
But allow me to say something about that.
Let's allow Bukola come in.
30 seconds.
You can add it to your response so we can have a well-rounded conversation. Bukola, over to you now.
Well, thank you so much, Kadi. Good morning, Mr. Bwala. Really, you know, I understand why you would like to... Yes, I understand why you would be sticking to the 5th, Mr. Bwala, because in case you get considered and you are perhaps included in Mr. President's cabinet, you would be getting 2.26 million naira per annum as basic salary, but that's not the real deal. The real deal is that you'll also be getting 1.519 million naira for fueling your cars or car, 500,000 naira for domestic staff remuneration, 1.5 million naira for entertainment allowance, 911,000 naira for utilities. Just to mention a few, and this is according to, you know, information from the RMAFC. But Mr. Bwala, really, we'll get to that later on. I want to really start with a comment from one of our viewers this morning who says that if indeed these ministers are working, there will be evidence. So I'd like you to be categorical as much as possible. From what you see on ground, the work of Mr. President's 49 ministers, who should stay, who should go, who should be moved?
This question you've asked is like $1 million question, and I don't think I have the jurisdiction to answer that, because as per who to stay and who to go, it is the prerogative of the president. I will be interested in answering questions such as, do you think, given what the administration has achieved, have the ministers been able to articulate effectively? Then we will have a conversation as to whether they've done that or not. Or if you are specific with the ministry to say, this particular ministry, are they able to meet up with the KPI? Because I haven't seen the KPI for myself, except that during the during the public engagement, they were able to say some of them who were well enough to articulate that. And I know for a fact that given what this administration has achieved, very little has been conveyed to the Nigerian people. And oftentimes it's because some people feel that the media is hostile to government. No, the media's responsibility is called people in public office to account on behalf of the Nigerian people. And the media use their mouth in asking, you use your mouth to answer. So why should you be afraid of coming out to talk on behalf of the president? Then there are other agents of government that very sadly, their attitude suggests that they don't even believe in the president. They rather want to play safe. So because there is an outcry about economic reform, which the consequence has brought a little bit of hardship to the Nigerian people, and we're all trying to navigate our way, they feel that if they put themselves in the line defending the government, they will incur the wrath of the people. So they want to be clever by heart or smart. They will rather that they stay behind, let others do the talk, hoping that that way they will be able to cover themselves from the backlash of the people. But this is my philosophy. If you believe in someone, it is like the case of a bodyguard. You are to take the bullet for the person. And most importantly, if you believe in someone, it is your duty to study what he has achieved and be able to convey to the Nigerian people. And even where you think that there is probably a failure, we are not afraid to fail in life. Government is not afraid to fail. But what you must always judge with government is that at every given time, the motive of the government, the intention of the government, and the accountability that the government brings to the people should be a factor for assessment. Not necessarily because you want to see some extraordinary thing before you do that. So the president is assessing whether some people believe in his administration, because if you do, you will be a messenger of what you believe in. But as to say who should go and who should stay is the prerogative of the president. Only the president knows who will go and who will stay. Anybody else who tells you he knows who will go and who will stay, I think the person is either second guessing or the person is not being fair to himself.
Mr. Bwala, I understand why you would be diplomatic at this time in answering this question. But if you would rather have it rephrased. Perhaps we should rephrase it, because you are a Nigerian, and some would disagree with you, when you say that the Nigerians do not believe in this administration. Some would say that Nigerians have, in fact, been very patient with the administration and, watched to see what it would offer. So if we could rephrase it, Mr. Bwala, perhaps in the Ministry of Finance, where we have a minister who is also the coordinating minister of the economy, has that ministry been able to transform the economic fortunes of the country such that we see a ramp up in revenues and a reduction in our debt, and we see a viable and thriving economy based on commerce? Have we seen that? In the Ministry of Agriculture, for instance, which is pivotal, to the survival of the nation, have we seen an abundance in agricultural development where, food is not a difficulty for the common man as what we find today? Just those two examples to begin with.
Yeah, so, but a little bit, a point of correction. I never said Nigerians do not believe in the administration. I am saying that if you are an appointee of the president and you are shy or ashamed of coming out to talk about the policy of the president, then invariably what you are saying is that you do not believe in the administration. Otherwise, we are messengers of what you believe. It's a general concept of life. If you cannot be a messenger of the administration, then you are saying you do not believe in the administration. There's no any other way to explain. Either you are incompetent or that you do not believe in the administration. That's why you can't speak. That's the point for that one. In terms of specific ministries, like I told you, if it is for the purposes of conversation around public impression or public expectation, is a different kettle of fish. But if you're talking of the performance of the ministers, and in pari, you are ranking it in pari passu with the president's decision, then what is guiding whether or not somebody has performed is not my opinion. I know I would have opinion that masses will have. It is the KPI. There is a KPI. It is like exams. You know that when you are preparing for WAEC, there are so many subjects, limitless subjects in the air. But for the purposes of that WAEC, there are specific questions based on specific topics regarding specific issues that you are going to be assessed. It is your performance within that orbit that will determine whether you pass WAEC or not. But assuming somebody wants to assess you based on what is outside of the plan of WAEC, the specific subject, topic, and area, then you are going to be having what we call misfiring. In my practice of law, when you ask a question and you try to give stories before you come to that, you already failed the question. You have to identify the issue, find the relevant law, apply the law, and then make a conclusion. So this is what I will say. And this is why I said it is the president that will know that, because he knows the KPI he has given to the people. But I agree with you, Bukola, and with many Nigerians, that because many ministers have not been able to come out and defend what they were asked to do, there is a general assumption that they have failed. If you have not failed, you will defend it. And there are some ministries that what they do or don't do has a direct effect on the masses. So ministries are implementation-based ministry. So ministries are policy-based ministry. Policy-based ministry are assessed based on the policies that they have applied, and then that policy will be measured along other alternative policies. So, for example, economics is a theory, and there are many theories to economics. So if you apply certain economic theory to a particular policy of government and it is not working, then are you able to flexibly change to a policy that will work? If it has not, the president will know that. The economics are there and they have been making their interventions. When it is implementation based, like you talk about agriculture, we know money was given, you are supposed to affect this area, provide seedings, give this to the masses, or humanitarian intervention in this area. Then we will ask, if these things have happened, why is it that we don't have a data to show? Why is it that the masses that have been impacted or affected by the policy have not been able to come out, or there is no assessment in your ministry to say this number of people were affected by government policy? So if it is implementation-based ministry, it is easy to assess.
Mr. Bwala, beyond the president's KPI, you are a Nigerian. Is it acceptable that we have a current exchange rate now that is 1,600 naira plus to the dollar? How is that ministry performing? You are a Nigerian. Is it acceptable that you are buying a bag of rice for over 80,000 naira now? Mr. Bwala, you are a Nigerian. So beyond the KPI, are these ministries performing? It's simple.
Okay, the answer is, I'll give you the answer this way. As a Nigerian, I'm not comfortable that the economic hardship is telling on everybody. All of us are affected. But then also, because there is a higher responsibility on my part to know why is it that the naira is a certain peg to a dollar, and why is it that the value of food has gone up to certain level, I will go beyond just making emotional statement to say, do I care enough to know? So, for example, the policy that were introduced, removal of subsidy, floating of the naira, how is the foundation for the reason why inflation comes? Now, what are we doing to curb inflation? There are many areas. So, if you want me to say whether the Minister of Finance is working or not, I think that policy-wise, the Minister of Finance has tried, but whether he's flexible enough, to keep applying policies that are tailored to the specifics, then you will have a different conversation. For example, the IMF policy is there, and whether you tinker with those policies to meet up with the expectation of the masses. So I think he's doing well.
Well, Mr. Boala, I'm looking at the list of ministers, and they will take time to go through all of them. Agriculture, water resources, special duties, police affairs, labor and employment, justice, information, steel. Nigerians don't even know some of these ministries because they don't see the work. And they're like, if you're not there, then you can as well just pack your bags and go on. Final note, 1 minute, Mr. Boala. Some see this as the president simply deflecting. The buck stops at his table.
Correct.
Deflecting the attention.
Right.
If ministers have failed, your government has failed.
That is exactly the reason why he wants to do the rejigging, because he acknowledges the fact that there is enough that has been done but has not been communicated.
What does that say about him as the captain of the ship? You take the responsibility. So again, some say as the president is deflecting,
but he has
blame the ministers. But how about you blame the president for these challenges as well? It's fair and square.
No, so I will blame the president if, for example, the president does not change the cabinet when he has acknowledged that there is a failure in the cabinet. All of us have acknowledged the fact that a lot of ministers have failed. All of us. You don't have to go up and down to know it. And the president is saying, when you come to me, you tell me we've achieved. Why is it that you are not talking it? Now, if the president does not rejig the cabinet and continues with them when he has acknowledged that a lot of them have not performed, that's where the blame will come. But when he said, I have assessed you, I will make a decision, go and talk to the Nigerian people about what you say you have done, then I will not be in a hurry to judge the president. What is my assessment about the president? I think that
I'll be shocked if you don't think the president is
the president has done well.
Well, I'm not shocked about that, Mr. Boala, but I'm saying that Nigerians see the realities, and who they can look to, the president they voted for is the president.
And
the
he has
president
always said
to take responsibility for that.
He has always said the boss stuff of my takes. Well, you've never heard him say that?
We have to anchor at this point.
Well, I want to ask you, have you ever heard him say
a pass mark, Mr. Boala? So I think that after you give him a pass, we have to anchor. We have to thank you so much. I don't know if in the coming days we'll be seeing anything about your possible appointment, but we'll wait to find out. Mr. Daniel Boala, legal practitioner, are people calling you incoming already?
Okay, I was admitted to practice in England by the Honorable Society of Legal Counsel. Incoming. What is in and coming?
There you go. Barrister Lincoln, thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you. My pleasure as always.
We'll take a moment now. When we return, we'll turn our attention to the economy. Yes, it ties to this conversation, but we're focusing on the sub-nationals. That's in a moment. Stay with us.
Welcome back. So we're turning our attention to another matter that is related now, the performance of states. We're attempting to look into their books this morning, particularly with reports that a lot of states are, resorting to loans despite increased FAC allocation. In fact, they've borrowed to the tune of 446 billion naira, 20 states of the Federation. So to help us look at this, we have joining us on the program this morning, Mr. Paul Alaji. Good morning, Mr. Alaji, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me.
So it's quite concerning, Mr. Laji, as we start off this morning, that in spite of increasing FAC allocations, reports say that FAC allocations to states have increased by about 50%. We see that states are still resorting to domestic and external borrowing, not just to fund infrastructure, but also to service debt as well. How concerning is this for you?
Well, thank you so much for having me once again. It's worrisome. If you check what the states were doing in terms of debt before 2023, it was not as much as what we have now. And what you have seen, according to the Debt Management Office, the information can be found on www.dmo.gov.ng. You see that total debt stock for subnational is now over 4 trillion naira. It's as high as 4 trillion naira, not because most of the states borrowed money. The report what was last reported on the website of DMO is not even a recent, is their most recent report, which was as at 31st of March 2024. We have had another quarter, which ended on the 30th of June 2024, and I know Debt Management Office will soon publish. Chances are that the number will go up again. Now, so there are three things when it comes to measuring what states are owing in debt. The first one is how much did they actually collect? The debt stock we are talking about has two components. Local debt, which most of the time is raised on the maybe from the Nigeria exchange for some of them, and other areas where they think they can find these monies to support their state. The second component is foreign debt, and this is a big issue right now. Recall that on May 29, 2023, the president, Mr. President, had announced subsidy removal, and I saw that virtually all the states shared this decision and said this is a welcome development. Many of them have tried to prevail on President Buhari to announce removal of subsidy, but some reasons best known to President Buhari, which was not particularly bad, President Buhari refused to completely remove subsidy. Now, on 15th or 16th of June, the central bank also floated the currency, and that is where the beginning of the issue lies. Now, floating the currency means Naira will find its level, and I've heard many of my friends across the country say, let Naira find its level. When Naira find its level, where you are around the world in terms of economic capacity, you will also need to find your level. And for developing country, I'm sorry, especially those in Africa, the level is not a good position. Now, where am I driving to? For states such as, let me give you an example of Osun State, that before flotation, the total debt stock for Osun was $99 billion. Now, if you multiply that as the then exchange rate of about 700 naira, 400 or 700 naira, Osun will be around 4 to 8 billion. Now, if you use 1,500, 1,600 to multiply what Osun is owing, Osun's debt will suddenly jump to over 80 billion naira. The question is, did Osun borrow more money? The answer is no. But Osun is gaining from the proceeds of what the federal government is paying in terms of what has gone to FAC. So to me, this approach is penny wise, pound foolish. Before you say you want more states to have more money, and I saw state governors sharing this, oh, we have more money for infrastructure. Wait a minute, what we need to ask is, where will you spend the money? Are you still going to spend the money to import things? Now, laborers have fought and said they were okay with 70,000 naira. If states start paying 70,000, and mark you, I had also mentioned in 2022 with one of your colleagues, Ms. Maokwe, that I remember I was in Abuja, and I said, by 2024, latest 2025, the federal government may have to borrow to service it. State government will have to borrow to service it. For federal government, because of subsidy removal and flotation, they were able to postpone it by another 2 to 3 years. If another thing is not done, I tell you, by 2026, 2027, we will not miss that chance of borrowing to service it. Clearly, it's the reality for most states. Apart from 3 states, namely Lagos, Rivers, as well as Anambra State, that are viable when it comes to using their IGR to service their overhead. I tell you, many of the, and I need to add FCT and FCT, many of the other states are currently in they're having economic concerns. Now, they may not understand that they are having it, because when you look at what debt service to revenue should be, standard in economic principle, it should be 33.3%. For Nigeria as a state, we are doing far less than 33.3%. I remember when Mr. President granted that national broadcast, he mentioned that he was able to bring it from 97 to about 65 or 67%. That is debt service to revenue. Where we are going is still 33.3. So if Nigeria is making a revenue, say 100 trillion, then we can say we can do a maximum of 33.3 trillion to service our debt. So it's a function of revenue. It's not a function of GDP, because when it talks to debt, we are referring to three things that are parameters, which I think everyone listening should know. First is, what is your debt to GDP ratio? Now, most countries will say we can do over 100%. Yeah, it really doesn't matter, because it's not a sufficient condition. In economics, it is called a necessary condition. The sufficient condition is what is your debt service to revenue, and that is what must not go beyond 3.3%. But the last but most important is by how much as your debt at your borrowing grow, that at your have you collected more loans compared to how much your economy has grown. And in that case, we're looking at 1 to 5. For Nigeria, we have borrowed more. For most states, they have borrowed more. In fact, in cases where they have not borrowed, because of flotation, the currency are so impacted on their debt profile, and they have swollen sporadically. Well, some people say it's swollen like a Jebugari. I would not want to say that, but it has swollen significantly. So here is it. Will they be able to still do everything they are doing well? The answer for most of the states, you saw that 3 or 5 states have even said, is it possible for us to pause what we are owing in debt? Unfortunately, that may not be the case. And I've also seen that at the national level, we are currently looking for how to speak to international community to see.
Yeah, pardon me. Let's get to another level of the conversation. And, let's look at what we're seeing or not seeing in these states that have increased FAC allocations and are burgeoning debts like Ijebugari, as you have said. What are we seeing as evidence of justifiable expenditure in those states of the Federation? And I'm going to back that up very quickly. There are reports also that some states have since joined the list of oil-producing states and have been receiving derivation funds, the 13% derivation, from as far back as 2016. Anambra, for instance, Kogi State, for instance, and Lagos. So what are you seeing in these states that justify the huge expenditure that has been coming to them?
Well, what I've seen is appointment of more aides. Like I said, apart from Lagos, Anambra, and Rivers, and FCT, most of the states, most of them, at least 30 of the states, they are not viable. And rather than having, you mentioned Kogi. Kogi announced over 1,000 aides. Over 1,000. Now, when you look at the viability of Kogi as a state, do you say that having 1,000 aides will suddenly make the state to perform well? The answer is no. Where is the impact? So, as much as they have made the money and they have even borrowed money, we cannot see new infrastructure. And please, maybe you should, this is a credible platform, and I know people can make input, especially on different platforms such as X. People can say if there is tremendous things that have happened in Kogi State or any other state, that they can feel the impact of the current growth in revenue that has gone through FAC to different states, as well as what they have collected in IGR, and lastly, the monies they have borrowed. And for most of the states, the answer is no. What you have seen is that the way the economic structure of Nigeria is designed is to say, let's employ more people. When somebody gets to office, he say, well, I need to put more people into place, or maybe in offices or in civil service, so that the next election, since many states are called civil servant states, so when we employ more people, their household will vote for us. The question will be, what is the goal of political office holder? They call it the welfare of people. I mean, to protect life and property and welfare of people. And when you talk about welfare, that is that is routed in economy of the people. Is their life better off today? Are they able to get 3 square meal? Are they able to improve their standard of living? Are they able to reduce their cost of living? These are key questions we must ask. So the Kogi example, even though it joined, rather than people being better off, unfortunately, they are worse off today.
I want the people in the states, everybody's in a state except those who are in the FCT, right? I want them to be able to plug into this conversation and understand why this is important. I was saying that, wanted to get your intervention on the recent interest rate, then the unemployment figures came out, inflation figures as well. We'll still eventually see the economic growth, the GDP figures. Maybe they'll rebase it and it might paint a better picture depending on what the rebasing does. But the point here is, how do all of these things add up to the bigger picture? Okay, some might say, why should I be concerned that states are indebted? They're just a little part of the big picture. The real deal is the federal government. They're borrowing a lot, mortgaging our future, which, yes, you can understand that. But why is it important to speak about the indebtedness of states, their financial situation? Why is it important in this bigger conversation for those who are wondering?
Well, it's so big because if the states don't perform, unfortunately, Nigeria will not perform. The federal government plays one role of, we have several governments in Nigeria. All the local governments are government. All the state governments are government. The FCT has its own government, technically. And the federal government is the central government, if you like. So all the government, if they don't perform, it's like having your whole body system and one of your finger is amputated. And you say, oh, it doesn't matter. That's a local government. You cannot do some things. Or say an arm, one of the arms is amputated. You say, no, don't worry, I will use the other arm. No, it is not designed like that. All states must be viable. All local government must be viable. Look at unemployment figure released by the Bureau of Statistics, and you saw the unemployment surge. A number of persons say, this unemployment figure is low. I laughed. I said, you have not seen the parameter for measurement. Right. The National Bureau of Statistics is saying those who cannot get a job for 1 hour a week, not 40 hours that you and I want to work for 8 hours a day. Now, standard work for most African countries and places I've been to is 8 hours a day. We're saying not a day. You are not even getting 8 hours for 5 days. No, we're saying 1 hour in a week. And of that 1 hour a week, 5.3%. What's the parameter? 2%. Outside Nigeria, when people don't get 1 hour a week for up to 3%, there's crisis. But we surge, from 4.2% to 5%, now to 5.3%. There's an issue. So, but where did the issue come from? Go to monetary authority. And that is why when we say that policy needs to converge, we know what we are talking about. Monetary authority, over 800 basis points, increase the MPR just 2024, and we have not seen the end because there is another meeting happening in November. Now, what is the implication of continuous rise in MPR? A monetary authority will tell you is to combat inflation and to reduce money supply. The question is, we saw reduction in inflation in July. I haven't seen a reduction in July and August. The central bank governor in the recent broadcast under the MPC mentioned that the National Bureau of Statistics noted that the reduction was in food inflation. And we can say that because I also practice in the sector, right, it's not because of harvest. So if you have reduction because of harvest in food inflation, do we say that it's because of raising rates that has made inflation to reduce? The answer is no.
So you think they're giving the wrong pill to the ailment? They will say that, well, first it was unanimous. It was all the members of the
It does not matter whether it's unanimous. If 10 doctors agree that the leg of a patient should be amputated because they don't have the technology to grow the leg, it does not mean they are right.
Right.
So it does not matter. But you see, we first need to understand economics beyond the elementary level. At elementary level, BSc, secondary school, they will tell you economics are of two types: demand pull, cost push. That's where they live it. But when you study economics at advanced level, you know that economy are of two, inflation are of two kinds. The first kind is monetary. That is when a nation is either confused or convinced that your currency is too strong, let's devalue it. That is the biggest devastation you can do to any economy. So why? We have a responsibility to go our reserve. If we don't go our reserve, we don't therefore say that let's devalue. That's on one hand. The second one is non-monetary inflation. Non-monetary inflation is when you have shortage of food supply, when you have other things that affect it. So the reduction you saw from July and August was as a result of non-monetary. Monetary authority have a responsibility to ensure that inflation reduced as a result of combating monetary component of inflation.
So maybe we're barking up the wrong tree here, and we need to, and it's been said that we need to focus on the fiscal side of things because they have a huge impact on harvest, for example. Imagine the Ministry of Agriculture, which ties to this whole cabinet shakeup that we talked about earlier on. Maybe government will look at the dashboard and say, okay, let's link it to the ministries and the rest. So let's now link this back to the state. There's a lot of things that we're trying to pull together. So let's link this to the state. Are they contributing to this? Because we need to know who to apportion the blame to. Are they contributing to all of these economic indices in one way or the other? And if that is the case, right, so what should state governments begin to do? Because I think the CBN governor said that they realized that once FAC allocation comes out, the value of a naira to the dollar drops.
I said it on your studio. So, that was in 2023. Now, perhaps what central bank governor is not telling us, but what econometrics, you can trace the number. Econometrics can trace the number for us. Once FAC allocation is paid, what happens to dollar? We are paying this money not in dollar, in naira. Could it be that when the money is paid, some persons take the money and purchase a foreign currency?
Mr. Alaji, let's contextualize it. The money is not paid to persons. It is paid to state governments and local. So
when the money is paid to either state or local government, according to central bank.
So it's either the states or the local government.
According to central bank government. Right. What happens is that the value of dollar swells. Now, what will happen? Go back to economics. It can only swell when demand increases. That's a known fact.
So it's either the state government
or the state governors or local government representatives are using the money made for the development of the people to purchase dollars.
For what reason? Is it to invest? I don't know.
Well, that reason is beyond economic scope. Who can answer the question will be Mr. President. And I've advised
and the governors themselves.
And the governors themselves. At the FEC, we need to tell ourselves the truth. If we want this country to work, we will not practice what we call the Turkish washing machine. Let's go back to economic history. Turkey had similar economic crisis with lira. And people lost so much confidence, including some leaders. Rather than using their local currency and their policies even much tougher than ours, where you couldn't even have access to Dutchman, no access to pound, no access to dollar. People were buying washing machine and stocking it. Hopefully, because they know all homes, washing clothes with your hand became out of fashion. All homes will come and buy at a higher rate so that they can store their value. The same thing. Now, their own washing machine may be in dollars. Just buy it, pile it, and hope that someday or somehow something will happen. But it is penny wise, pound foolish.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, the debts those states are owing will swell. You are going back to where we started. The debt, because you are now making the value of naira to get weaker. It is only wickedness that as somebody in authority, you take a decision that will make the entire federation, including manufacturers, who wants to buy inputs. When they're saying they get worse, what happened? If it's worse, well, there's not so much. It's either manufacturer closing shop or sack labor. When it sacks labor, National Bureau of Statistics will tell you that unemployment has increased. And you say, oh, what are they doing? 1 hour a week? So our action is very important. The president has made policy, money has increased. Upon this increase that has happened, are we saying that we have been able to really trace it to meaningful and significant development? The answer is no. That is why I said overall, we need to find another economic position. Because the one we are running now, there are too many others that we need to cross to get to that point.
I wonder if you're also suggesting that the president should look into the ministries that are directly impacting on, the economy of a country. They all do, by the way, but the ones that are directly, and maybe do some reshuffling there. But I imagine Bukola wants to come in now. Bukola, over to you. I know we're smack in the middle of what states are doing now, but let's come to Lagos. Is Lagos a part of this or not, Bukola?
Definitely. Lagos is a part of it as well. We see some infrastructure, but we also require more accountability in the spending of additional funds. Lagos is getting derivation funds. We should be looking in that area as well. But Mr. Laje, spot on commentary, and it exposes a lot of gaps in resource management, in scrutiny by state assemblies. For instance, we had the MD of FAN just a few months ago on the program, and she said out of 22 airports, only 5 are viable and funding the other airports. And we see state governors spending huge funds on building airports. For instance, in the Southwest, 6 governors have voted, according to reports, 266 billion naira to construct new airports. Most of the ones that we have are not viable. Mr. Laje, we know that state assemblies are beholden to governors. What options then are left, to sort of put checks around governors, to stop all of these fancy projects that do not build capacity and, still leave us in the throes of issues of low human capital development index, unemployment? So what options are there to audit the books and put a check on these fancy projects?
Well, if you can help me repeat the question. Sorry, I lost you a bit there.
Well, so the point of the question is demanding more accountability from state governors and reduction in the fancy projects that do not engender development. We have issues of unemployment and, poor human capital development. We know that the state assemblies are unable, to put those accountability that we require in check. So what options are there, to check excessive spending of the subnationals?
The federation must agree to something. All of us as Nigeria, our legislature, our judiciary, the executive, the citizens, all of us must agree to what we really want. And what do I mean by that? Irrespective of who is in office, irrespective of the political party, APC, PDP, Labour Party, APP, AMPP, whatever, we must have a roadmap on how to develop this country. We must have measurements. Say, if the state governor has gotten up to XYZ percentage of revenue, it can't borrow again. We must also say that for a particular state, these are how money is to be spent. And before that will be changed, it has to go through certain process. If not, everybody that wants to run for office, either as local government chairman or at the state level, it is because, oh, it is my turn, this is what I want, this is my share, let me get my own. But when we agree as a state, and Nigeria will not be the only state, only country to do that. A few other countries that were developing at the time also understood that because of the tendency to be greedy, which is inherent in human nature, which also drives part of laissez-faire economy, we need to come to an agreement such that we know where we are going. As it is today, if I ask you, where do we think Nigeria will be in the next 20 years? What would you say? Where will it be in the next 40 years? Or maybe I should say, where will it be in the next 10 years? So it's important for us to have that agreement. Or if we don't, then what we are saying may not really have so much impact. There must be a law that limits, that directs, and that points to a direction where we want to be or things we want to achieve.
Well, Mr. Laje, some would say laws are made to be breached, and we know, how many executives, breach the rule of law in this country. Should we be doing a lot more than, coming to an agreement and putting in place laws that are not invoked when they're needed to be invoked the most? So should we be looking at stripping immunity for the executives, for instance? And we heard the other day that the FCC said they'll be going in after the banks too, for corruption. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that's interesting and that is good. If immunity is abused, at which we have seen that it has been abused over and again, I think we need to review it. 2, what I meant by that is when you look at the Constitution, the Constitution guarantees independence of local government. For a long time, they've been stripped of this right by the governors. But eventually, justice prevailed. There is an announcement, the Supreme Court of Nigeria aligned with what many Nigeria have thought about, that local government should be independent. When we have a law, I know someday, somehow, the law will prevail. And now it's not just having the law, it is ability to implement. It is the will of the CEC, the chief executive of the country, to say we must implement this law. And that is what I think we need to look at. We need to redesign the entire system, and some persons may say restructure, if that is the right word, that will let people understand what should be done. I think it's high time we took that decision. We cannot just say every 4 years, we elect new officials, or we re-elect some officials back to office to do what? Just the same thing. The world is not waiting for us. The world is moving on. So it's either we are playing catch up or we are onlookers, or we want to be the one to lead narratives around the world. And it's important. There is what we call National Economic Plan. Nigeria has written it over and over again. But all the National Economic Plan lack legislation. There is no act of parliament that backs them up. And that's what I'm referring to. No act of parliament. There is no law. The Constitution does not even back them up. So it is whatever. For instance, President Buhari, when he was in office, he presented a law, Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. Only 6 out of 36. Most APC states don't even support it. They did not implement it in their state. And we are wondering why the administration did not perform well in terms of economy. Then he brought another policy after Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, because that had only 11%. He brought another one, I think, Sustainable Plan. How many of his own states that are members of his party supported it? Why? Because they say we have a different vision. When the vision are too many, it leads to confusion. So here is it. We need to have legislation back some of the things. If we say that, oh, different states, many Nigerians will not stay with their state. Everybody wants to point to the center. When you look at conversation in the media, either in the print media, on radio, on television, most of the conversation is usually centralized. So we need to centralize policy and say, this is how states can spend. This is the maximum amount you can bring as aid. This is the total number of ministers. We cannot say we have this large number of ministers and say we are trying to tighten our belt. It does not agree. It does not align with the realities on the streets. So if we look at all of these and look at the reality of what our income is saying, what our debt is saying, and so on and so forth, then we can say, yes, it reflects what we want to achieve as states and as a country.
Interesting. And we can also talk about the citizens' responsibility as well, what they can do, to go after the money in their communities, in their localities, while also demanding accountability. But you have time to respond to that, Mr. Laji, after this short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Better, more nutritious meals, more veggies, but we want it tasty and easy too. Knorr Cubes, that's the secret. Made with real ingredients like chicken, parsley, and garlic, and enriched with iron, so your meals are better for you and more delicious too. That's the cocoa. Let's give it some accolades. Change your world by changing what's on your plate.
We live in an era of massive innovation, true ideas that impact every industry and society, cutting-edge technology that gives you a glimpse of the future, intuitive minds that meet the demand of revolution of talent. The future of enterprise lies in the digital world. It's full of questions and yet solutions. Join us on Tech Trends as we bring you the finest blend of technology and the latest happenings in the tech space. Tech Trends, the tech edge you need.
Welcome back, and we still have Mr. Paul Alaji, senior economist, SPM professionals, and we've been looking at the increasing indebtedness of the subnationals despite increased FAC allocations, and in fact, what exactly these funds are, going into. And Mr. Alaji, you were talking earlier, about the need for us to agree on, a direction. You also talked about how increasingly we've had national budget economic planning programs that have not been backed by legislation. How can that change? We've also had an economic stabilization plan under this government as well. So how can that change? And as I said earlier, in addition to that, citizens' responsibility. What can citizens do also, to demand accountability beyond the commentary on the civic space, but also looking at their own communities and seeing where the money is going?
Well, I can tell you that 3 CSOs have been doing fantastic job, not limited to budgets, They are doing a lot of work around that space. Yaga Africa is doing a lot of work. And follow the money. There is some set of people, young people, who are doing extremely well and with Follow the Money. I read some of their articles, I read their publications, and I see that they are able to tell us what is going on in state. And I know independent media organizations such as your TV station from time to time bring these people and also bring reports just for us to check. We just need more of these to happen at the state, not just the state, even at the local government. Because some states that have been asked, even some legislature who have said they want the federal government to do XYZ in their communities, but such money has. Well, if you can help me repeat the question, sorry, I lost you a bit there.
Well, so the point of the question is demanding more accountability from state governors and reduction in the fancy projects that do not engender development. We have issues of unemployment and, poor human capital development. We know that the state assemblies are unable, to put those accountability that we require in check. So what options are there, to check excessive spending of the subnationals?
The federation must agree to something. All of us as Nigeria, our legislature, our judiciary, the executive, the citizens, all of us must agree to what we really want. And what do I mean by that? Irrespective of who is in office, irrespective of the political party, APC, PDP, Labour Party, APP, AMPP, whatever, we must have a roadmap on how to develop this country. We must have measurements. Say, if the state governor has gotten up to XYZ percentage of revenue, it can't borrow again. We must also say that for a particular state, these are how money is to be spent. And before that will be changed, it has to go through certain process. If not, everybody that wants to run for office, either as local government chairman or at the state level, it is because, it is my turn, this is what I want, this is my share, let me get my own. But when we agree as a state, and Nigeria will not be the only state, only country to do that. A few other countries that were developing at the time also understood that because of the tendency to be greedy, which is inherent in human nature, which also drives part of laissez-faire economy, we need to come to an agreement such that we know where we are going. As it is today, if I ask you, where do we think Nigeria will be in the next 20 years, what would you say? Where will it be in the next 40 years? Or maybe I should say, where will it be in the next 10 years? So it's important for us to have that agreement. Or if we don't, then what we are saying may not really have so much impact. There must be a law that limits, that directs, and that points to a direction where we want to be or things we want to achieve.
Well, Mr. Alaje, some would say laws are made to be breached, and we know, how many executives, breach the rule of law in this country. Should we be doing a lot more than, coming to an agreement and putting in place laws that are not invoked when they're needed to be invoked the most? So should we be looking at stripping immunity for the executives, for instance? And we heard the other day that the FCC said they'll be going in after the banks too, for corruption. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that's interesting and that is good. If immunity is abused, at which we have seen that it has been abused over and again, I think we need to review it. Two, what I meant by that is when you look at the Constitution, the Constitution guarantees independence of local government. For a long time, they've been stripped of this right by the governors. But eventually, justice prevailed. There is an announcement, the Supreme Court of Nigeria aligned with what many Nigeria have thought about, that local government should be independent. When we have a law, I know someday, somehow, the law will prevail. And now it's not just having the law, it is ability to implement. It is the will of the CEC, the chief executive of the country, to say we must implement this law. And that is what I think we need to look at. We need to redesign the entire system, and some persons may say restructure, if that is the right word, that will let people understand what should be done. I think it's high time we took that decision. We cannot just say every 4 years we elect new officials, or we re-elect some officials back to office to do what? Just the same thing. The world is not waiting for us. The world is moving on. So it's either we are playing catch up, or we are onlookers, or we want to be the one to lead narratives around the world. And it's important. There is what we call National Economic Plan. Nigeria has written it over and over again. But all the National Economic Plan lack legislation. There is no act of parliament that backs them up. And that's what I'm referring to. No act of parliament. There is no law. The constitution does not even back them up. So it is whatever. For instance, President Buhari, when he was in office, he presented a law, Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. Only 6 out of 36. Most APC states don't even support it. They did not implement it in their state. And we are wondering why the administration did not perform well in terms of economy. Then he brought another policy after Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, because that had only 11%. He brought another one, I think Sustainable Plan. How many of his own states that are members of his party supported it? Why? Because they say we have a different vision. When the vision are too many, it leads to confusion. So here is it. We need to have legislation back some of the things. If we say that, different states, many Nigerians will not stay with their state. Everybody wants to point to the center. When you look at conversation in the media, either in the print media, on radio, on television, most of the conversation is usually centralized. So we need to centralize policy and say, this is how states can spend. This is the maximum amount you can bring as aid. This is the total number of ministers. We cannot say we have this large number of ministers and say we are trying to tighten our belt. It does not agree. It does not align with the realities on the streets. So if we look at all of these and look at the reality of what our income is saying, what our debt is saying, and so on and so forth, then we can say, yes, it reflects what we want to achieve as states and as a country.
Interesting. And we can also talk about the citizens' responsibility as well, what they can do, to go after the money in their communities, in their localities, while also demanding accountability. But you have time to respond to that, Mr. Laji, after this short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back, and we still have Mr. Paul Alaje, senior economist, SPM professionals, and we've been looking at the increasing indebtedness of the subnationals despite increased FAC allocations, and in fact, what exactly these funds are, going into. And Mr. Alaje, you were talking earlier, about the need for us to agree on, a direction. You also talked about how increasingly we've had national budget economic planning programs that have not been backed by legislation. How can that change? We've also had an economic stabilization plan under this government as well. So how can that change? And as I said earlier, in addition to that, citizens' responsibility. What can citizens do also, to demand accountability beyond the commentary on the civic space, but also looking at their own communities and seeing where the money is going?
Well, I can tell you that 3 CSOs have been doing fantastic job, not limited to budgets. They are doing a lot of work around that space. Yaga Africa is doing a lot of work. And follow the money. There is some set of people, young people, who are doing extremely well and with Follow the Money. I read some of their articles, I read their publications, and I see that they are able to tell us what is going on in state. And I know independent media organizations such as your TV station from time to time bring these people and also bring reports just for us to check. We just need more of these to happen at the state, not just the state, even at the local government. Because some states, that have been asked, even some legislature who have said they want the federal government to do XYZ in their communities, but such money has not been spent, or in some cases where the monies have been released, but the project cannot be found. You need to look at reports of those 3 organizations. I can tell you that they are doing quite a lot. Talking about development plan, national development plan. First of all, agricultural development plan and the implementation of the strategy therein. If we don't, honestly, there's nothing we can do about food shortage. It's either we come to the agreement that right now, this is the price we should be buying things, or the food prices should remain this. That the food price we go back, for instance, a bag of rice will go to 35,000 naira. Well, I doubt. Maybe if we change our currency or redominate the currency, then we can say a bag of rice may go. But because there are no plans, we are just working. We just wake up one morning, we are going to a direction. There is no plan. And it's not just the plan that the plan cannot be done. Now, ability to implement the plan. And where is the plan direction also? And that is why I am hoping again that Mr. President will talk to members of the cabinet and state governor and agree that we want to have a direction for Nigeria. So it is in this direction that the government can talk to National Assembly to make it a law. Now, it will not just be having just those in power. It will be those even in opposition. So that when they get to power someday, they will not say that we were not part of it. So that every Nigerian will be involved. I think it will be representative of the entire strata of the country. Then we can say we have a direction. We know where we are going. I can tell you, nations know where they are going. Rwanda already planned to 2050. You are wondering why Rwanda suddenly jumped from war to countries where many investments are going to. And people are wondering, we are the real experiment of Africa, of black people in the world. We have the largest population, over 220 million. You know, in the next 10 years, we may surpass 250 million people. But are we able to organize ourselves? Are we able to bring development to ourselves? That we are dark does not mean the content of our mind or our brain to be dark. But if we don't plan and implement the same, I am sorry, that is the way it will be regarded around the world. And our passport will be the evidence of that rejection.
Well, the federal government will tell you, we've raised the minimum wage, 70,000 naira minimum wage. If our core members, we're getting 77,000 naira allowance per month now. That's according to the federal government. It also said pensioners will be a part of this consequential adjustment and the rest. So government naturally will tell you that we're trying to do some things.
It's a bad deal for labor. I spoke on several plans and I told labor that if you agree to 70,000, it's a huge bad deal.
What should they have agreed to?
Minimum of 100,000. Minimum. I didn't say 100. A minimum of 100. What is exchange rate today? 1,600. Multiply that by 2. 3,000. Multiply by that 30. For you to escape poverty, you need $1.95. Averagely $2 a day. What is 70,000 naira within the reality? Just yesterday, a bag of rice, as a practitioner there, went to 85,000. The minimum, 85,000 in the average location.
And is that local or imported?
Local rice.
Why is local rice that expensive?
Also, so the person that sells a module of rice to you, we also bought the vehicle to his house. And the price of PMS has increased significantly. So how do you want him to live in that economic space? So I saw when labor was jumping that, the minimum wage, government have said it's going to be above 60,000. That is times 100. I was just laughing and said, what are you talking about? Economics does not bother whether it's times 100 or times 2,000. Is he able to sustain your population? But guess what? You see us to come for more. You see enemy come for more. That is why, if you know you cannot finish it, don't start it. It's a golden rule in economics. If you are not going to finish it, don't start it. Check. Why did we devalue? Why did he float the currency? What benefit has it brought to us? We are saying that it's going to make revenue to state to increase. But rather than having more revenue, are we not having more debt? That is why, for me, we should have pegged and have a milestone devaluation than letting everything loose. And if you check it, put basket of commodity in Nigeria and select any countries of yours, maybe 5 or 10. From research, Naira should be around 1,000 to the dollar. But because we cannot back it up, so economies that cannot back it, and people say that is what happened in the world. I don't agree. Go to United Arab Emirates. Wait a minute. What are they exporting? United Arab Emirates, it has been 3.65 dirhams to the dollar since 15 years ago till date. 3.65 dirhams to the dollar. Nigeria cannot be a bad Samaritan, holier than thou, and say we want to make policy. Don't worry, let's let it loose. It's going to hurt all of us. All of us have been affected. I don't know, maybe your own income has doubled or tripled, but the reality of it is that since last year till date, not for so many people. And that is why Labour needs to be more concerned about the welfare of their members. I'm not a member
of course. Maybe you are one of those whose income has even times 10 or
how will it times 10?
But
I'm a producer.
So the point I was going to when I said the federal government would say that they've increased minimum wages, that what then happens to state governments who are already indebted? They're meant to pay 70,000 naira minimum.
But they're already borrowing to service debt. It's economic chaos.
So does that mean they would have to borrow more? Because I want us to now project properly. If their wage bill has increased by virtue of the increase in minimum wage, does that mean that we'll see states borrowing even much more than what we're saying is a lot right now?
But it's a state of confusion. State, we have no option.
Than to borrow.
Or the lay of staff. Those are the options. It's either you sack people, which will now increase unemployment rate. Remember that what do we call it now? The committee in the central bank, monetary policy committee, is still increasing rates, which of course will induce unemployment because there are three effects: crowd out investment, affect growth, and also crowd out employment. So state has no option. Has two options: borrow to pay, at least for 30 states of the federation. You have to borrow to pay, or abandon capital projects.
But as a
they can abandon capital projects, which is also a wrong decision. If you abandon capital projects and you say, okay, we just want to be a civil service state, like we have heard from most places in Nigeria already, and then you can keep facing that, or you borrow. So which of the three is the one that state we choose? Well, there are tough decisions right now.
There's another option, which is the theme of this conversation: creative thinking. States need to think creatively. State governors need to think creatively. Enough is enough of just waiting for FAC allocations, going to Abuja, as they say, and then relying on the bits and pieces here and there. States need to think creatively, and that's the essence of this conversation. We've said it time and again, almost sound like a broken record, that we don't see any state that actually deserves to be poor in this country.
Let me give you an instance, sir. Lagos State started rail lines, partner with federal government, perfect innovation. We've seen what they are doing on the highland. And that is why, in spite of the humongous debt Lagos had, as at March, which is close to 1 trillion naira, can Lagos sustain it? The answer is yes.
They have something to show for it.
They have something to show for it. Something to show for it. River State. I've been to Rivers a number of times for research work. And I've also seen growth in infrastructure. I've not been to Anambra State, so I may not be able to speak for Anambra State. But I will tell you state I've been to. Now, for most of these states, you cannot see anything significant to show for it. And if you truly want to grow your economies, creative thinking is important, but you must support young people, because that is the real asset. Our asset is not what is under our foot, we call crude oil, or we call bitumen, or whatever. Our real asset as a nation is what is in the content of our brain. If not, if what is on our foot and we cannot as a nation or a state, we will employ foreigners who are able to think and have technology to bring it out, and they will give us piecemeal. That is what we have been since we recovered oil in Olibiri till date. Why is technology so scarce that we cannot use it to boost the revenue of our citizens? It's a huge challenge. So for us as a people, we must get to a point where we look at what is it that our young people can do the most. Can they build things? Can they work in technology space? Can they code? Can we put all of this together? I want to see a state that will say the state is known for coding. Maybe Kaduna State. I want to see a state that will say, when it comes to cashew nuts, don't worry. It's not about having 1,000 something aids. No. But I want to donate 1,000 hectares. I'm talking to Kogi State government now. And I want to bring young people on farm. And instead of giving this money to hate, I want to use it to support them. I want to see an Osun state where cocoa, that the entire Southwest was known for. And the state government says that farmers, we want you to donate it. We will pay it for you. With partnership, maybe with central bank or with federal government, we will give you seedlings. And we will guarantee your output. That's what we want to see. You can now look at Lagos State. What can I sell to them? With the numbers that we have in Lagos, So it's not going to be looking at our religious division in our religious line or ethnicity or politics. No, because at the end of the day, when people get economics right, all of other lines of demarcation will disappear.
So they need to start thinking there's informal sector, untapped gold that we need to get into. But Mr. Laje, you've given them free consultation. I hope you'll be tailing them for maybe your fees, because the states are listening. Free. There you go. But we'll have to thank you so much. This is a very important conversation, and I'm glad we're able to have it. Mr. Paul Alaje, Senior Economist, SPM Professionals. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now we'll take a moment, and it's the last stretch of the show this morning. The Judiciary. The CJN has been, well, approved by the Senate, so work begins in earnest for her. But we've seen a lot of other things playing out. What is the work ahead? That's in a moment. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Morning Brief on Channels Television. And so our next leg of conversation now is the judiciary. As we told you earlier, we're visiting the Temple of Justice to look at the task before the new CJN, Justice Kudirat Kekere-Ekun. And to join us on the program this morning for this conversation, we have Mr. Nelson Olanikpekun Esquire, who is the Executive Director, Citizens Gavel. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And I see that you have come fully equipped, in fact, armed. But the intention is certainly not to harm.
Yeah.
So let's get straight into it. We saw the screening yesterday, and the new CJN said, you know, proudly so, that she's known for her integrity and for discipline. And those are virtues that are in short supply, you know, in the judiciary currently.
Yes.
Starting with the obvious, her gender.
Yes.
Do you think that that would be a problem, particularly in enforcing those virtues that are in short supply in a seemingly male-dominated field?
Yeah, I think that over the time, we all know that a lot of judges are female judges. So I don't think gender would be an issue. Be a female judge shouldn't be an issue. And of course, the head of the legislature is a male, the president is a male, and it is just really nice to have a female head of the judiciary. So, and I think the big task before the CJN now, our Lordship Kekere-Ekun, is to see how to reposition the judiciary. Over time, the MBS report came out about the corruption level in the judiciary, worse than what we see in the police and in customs. That's alarming. And even our own internal report at Citizen Gavel also speaks to the level of corruption in the judiciary. So the big elephant in the room is corruption in the judiciary. And I think, and that is why I bring forward this main thing, these figurines to the studio. I think in Nigeria, what we need to see is how do we handle the lack of rule of law in judiciary, which has really been worsened by the level of corruption in judiciary. Everybody wants to see a reform in Nigeria at the moment. The democratic principles is failing, and to an extent, it has really failed to a great degree. So how do we fix that with the judiciary? The judiciary is the chief accountability organization, arm of the government. And it's very important that if we can put that in place, every other thing that we see in the country is fixed. And I represent the people with this figurine. This is average Nigeria, you and I. We face issues around police brutality. We face different levels of injustice. After this average you and I, we have the institution. You have the police. You have the customs. You have the normal institutions that you interact with, and you have the elephant in the room, the judiciary. And what happens is that naturally, when people get to interact with these institutions, for example, an institution that is hot right now is the NNPC. When people interact with them, you get different levels of, there is corruption here, there is issues here, people are not obeying the laws and all that. But if you can fix the judiciary, there's a way the chief accountability arm of government, which is the judiciary, fixes the institution because it's able to hold the institution accountable, and the institution, on the other hand, holds the people accountable. So the ripple effect is very enormous. So you see law and order and rule of law. So imagine the judiciary is fixed. It rests on the institution, like the police, and it rests on the citizen. And everything causes a ripple effect, whereby the Nigeria, you begin to see obedience to normal, even simple issues like traffic laws. You get rule of law compliance from government parastatals, because these are the things that we have issues with. But going beyond that is also other issues that faces the judiciary, like appointment of judges. There has been issues around nepotism in the judiciary, corruption. So you see a sitting judge putting his wife as a court of appeal. A sitting governor or minister putting his wife as a court of appeal, or different scenarios like that. And you also see where CJNs, past CJNs, put their children, as judges. Nepotism has become the order of the day. So putting structures in place that enhances transparency and appointment of judges that have got integrity, is very key. That is one of the first mandates, because these people are the people that interfaces. The everyday judge are the ones that interface with. So
speaking of fixing the judiciary, by the way, we're going to get to Coyote very shortly. One of the things that may have made the judiciary, that institution, to feel isolated in the last decades would be poor remuneration. But we have seen that this administration has, sort of fixed that with an increase in remuneration for judicial officers. So will that address these challenges in the next couple of years down the line? Or are we going to be needing an institution that needs to reflect, and take a long look at itself in the mirror and also, do its own part?
Yeah, so I think the remuneration part is a good one. However, I see a way, my issue is the judiciary gets to rely on the executive for remuneration, which shouldn't be, because that puts a lot of reliance. And that means the level of independence between the judiciary and the executive and the legislation becomes, it's not properly placed. So I'm hoping that the CJN also looks at the remuneration further, how they could reduce the reliance on other arms of government. And so they don't need to have permission. Recently, the president approved houses for judges. Now, the questions out there is the president preparing for 2027? Because he recently increased remuneration and is approving. So that's the question out there. But the main thing I would like the CJN to do is how can they break the level of reliance on the executive by even looking inward and generating revenue that they could use to be sustainable, independent of the executive. So the allowances can be paid from income generated inwards, and they can now be able to speak and put judgments, and talk to people and make orders that reflect the wishes of people, and not just things that would reflect the aspirations of the politicians.
And there's so many issues to explore in that space, but let's head to Abuja now. Coyote has some questions for you.
Oh, thank you, Bukola. Mr. Nelson, they say he who pays the piper dictates the tune. So it's expected that this will be a major concern. We'll see how she'll navigate it. But another point, or another issue has been having the courts decide elections, or at least those who win elections eventually, and not the voters who went out to vote for candidates of their choice. I know she would have lots of election petitions to handle, maybe starting with the Edo election, and maybe, who knows, the Ondo election, on and on like that. Is there some fix that she can maybe apply in that area?
Yeah, so one big issue that we've noticed over time is the issue of election petition and, judiciary dictating who sits on that seat. And that's a big issue, because that oftentimes, it does not reflect the wish the wishes of an average Nigerian. So I think the CJN needs to reposition the judiciary in such a way that it would dissociate itself and the judiciary can reflect the wishes of the people. Now, one big thing that has to do with election petition is the corruption that is tried. So instituting a monitoring system that curbs corruption. So when election petition judges are sitting, there should be a monitoring system that oversees the day-to-day runnings and that the judges, the panel, the election petition judges, their day-to-day runnings. But beyond that, it's also a clear-cut procedure, criteria for the selection of election petition judges. You don't really have that at the moment. You've got a lot of there is lack of opacity in that system. We're looking at the judiciary that we can put all the necessary criteria in place for the selection of judges, election petition judges, and also further putting oversight mechanism in place to curb the excesses of these judges during that time. Then also investigation of any form of allegations during that time. Sometimes when you read judgment, you see that this judgment does not align. In law, you see there is a principle of stare decisis. Judgments from lower court should align with previous decision, but sometimes you see a very wide divergence. So putting, wherever you see those divergences, you need to, by yourself, by the judiciary, look at ways of investigating why didn't this new judgment comply with previous judgment?
And you know, that's just a part of the problem.
Yes.
Some would say that the reforms, you know, should be as holistic, wall to wall, as it should be as, you know, all-encompassing from floor to ceiling.
Yes.
We could go on and on about it, but you know, there's pressure on even me from this side of the divide, you know, to wrap up the conversation. I wish we had more time, but we look forward to having you yet again on the program. We want to thank you very much, Mr. Nelson Olanipekun, the Executive Director, Citizens Gavel. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you so much.
And that does it on our package for you today. Of course, we'll be back again tomorrow for another rich one on your perfect day starter. Thank you so much for watching. I am Bukola Koka.
Don't worry, we have our eyes on all of those issues. The EFCC, Bob Risky, very dark black man, Mr. Falana, his son. But not to worry, we'll get you more insights. I'm Kekere-Ekun. Sunrise Daily is next. Goodbye.